My name is Destiny Clarke, and I'm 28 years old. The moment that changed everything started with a simple text message on a Tuesday morning. Come meet my family this weekend. It's time. From Brandon. My fiancé of 3 months, boyfriend of 2 years before that. I stared at those words on my phone screen in the Boston Herald newsroom, my coffee going cold in my hand. 2 years. 730 days of dating a man who'd somehow never quite found the right moment to introduce me to his family. There had always been an excuse. His mother was traveling. His sister was going through something. The timing wasn't right. Family drama he didn't want to burden me with, but I'd ignored every single red flag because I was in love. Or maybe because I wanted to believe that love was enough to smooth over the questions my journalist brain kept raising. Before I tell you how this weekend visit destroyed everything I thought I knew about the man I was going to marry, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever ignored your gut instinct for someone you loved, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. The Uber picked me up from my South End apartment Friday evening at 5:47 p.m. I'd packed light. One overnight bag with my nicest dress, the navy one Brandon always said brought out my eyes, and enough toiletries for 2 days. The plan was simple: meet the family, make a good impression, get through the weekend, and return to Boston Sunday night. Greenwich, Connecticut, I told the driver, reading the address Brandon had finally sent me that morning. The Castellano estate. Not house. Not home. Estate, the driver whistled low. That's old money territory. You got friends there? Something like that, I said, settling into the back seat. As we merged onto I-95 South, I pulled up Brandon on my phone. Our text history was a timeline of 2 years of careful evasion. Can't make it home for Thanksgiving, babe. Family stuff. Christmas is complicated with my family. Let's do our own thing. My mom's not ready to meet anyone yet. She's still dealing with my dad's passing. His father had died 5 years ago, according to Brandon. Heart attack on the golf course. Sudden. Tragic. But 5 years seemed like enough time to be ready for your son's girlfriend, didn't it? I closed the messages and opened my work email instead. 3 stories in various stages of completion. A corruption investigation at City Hall. A follow-up on the housing crisis. An exposé on real estate fraud that my editor David had assigned me last month. That one had been interesting. Shell companies, money moving through Connecticut properties, names that kept appearing in unusual patterns. One of those names had been Castellano. I'd mentioned it to Brandon once, casually over dinner. Funny coincidence. I'm investigating a case with your last name. He'd barely looked up from his steak. Common Italian name. Probably not related. The conversation had ended there. I'd let it drop because I wanted to believe him. The highway stretched ahead, late afternoon sun turning everything golden. My phone buzzed. Brandon again. Can't wait to see you. Fair warning, my sister Nicole can be intense. Don't take anything she says personally. Intense. That was new information. In 2 years, he'd barely mentioned Nicole beyond her name and the fact that she existed. The Uber driver took the Greenwich exit, and the neighborhoods began to change. Modest homes gave way to gated communities. Gated communities gave way to estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Old money. The kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. My stomach twisted with something I told myself was nervousness. Looking back, I realize it was my instinct screaming at me to run. If you've ever ignored red flags for love, you'll understand what happens next. The question is, would you have seen the truth sooner than I did? Victoria's grip on my hands tightened. Her tears had stopped as suddenly as they'd started, and something in her expression shifted. The grief melted away, replaced by something calculated. Cold Destiny, dear, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I need your help. The words hung between us like a trap I'd already stepped into. Help with what? I asked, trying to pull my hands back. She held firm. Brandon is trying to have me institutionalized. She glanced toward the doorway where Nicole had disappeared, then back to me. He's been threatening me for months. Says I'm unstable, that I'm a danger to myself. But it's all lies, Destiny. He wants control of the family trust. My journalist instincts kicked in automatically. How much are we talking about? $40 million. She said it casually, like discussing the weather. My late husband left everything in a trust. Brendan gets full control when he turns 35 or when I'm deemed mentally incompetent. Whichever comes first. 35. Brandon was 33. 2 years away from inheriting everything without needing his mother declared unfit. Why would he rush it? I asked. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Because he's drowning in debt. The cars, the penthouse in Boston, the lifestyle he's been showing you. All of it borrowed against money he doesn't have yet. The creditors are circling, and he needs that trust now. I thought about Brendan's apartment. The views of the harbor. The designer furniture. The expensive dinners where he always insisted on paying. I'd assumed he had family money. He'd never said otherwise. What does this have to do with Jennifer Morrison? I asked, testing her. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That's my insurance. Proof that Brandon is capable of terrible things. Proof that he's the unstable one, not me. You said he killed her. He did. But there was no grief in her voice now. No horror. Just cold calculation. I saw it happen. I've kept that secret for 20 years, but I'll use it if I have to. If he tries to take everything from me, I'll destroy him. The confession from 5 minutes ago. The tears. The trembling hands. It had all been performance. I'd walked into this house and immediately taken sides based on Brandon's stories about his cruel sister and fragile mother. I'd been played from the moment I stepped through the door. Here's what I'm proposing, Victoria continued, her voice steady and businesslike now. You marry Brandon as planned. But you help me document his instability. His threats. His violence. You're a journalist. You know how to gather evidence, how to build a case. My stomach turned. You want me to spy on your son. I want you to help me protect what's rightfully mine. She released my hands finally, sitting back. Once we have enough evidence to prove he's unfit, we go to the courts. Get him removed as trustee. Then you help me with the divorce, and we split everything. 20 million for you. 20 for me. You'd never have to work another day in your life. $20 million. The number should have been tempting. Should have made me pause. Instead, it just made me angry. You're trying to bribe me to betray the man I'm supposed to marry. I'm offering you a way out before you make the biggest mistake of your life. Victoria stood, smoothing her dress. The mascara tracks on her face were still visible, but her composure had returned completely. Do you really think my son loves you? Do you think it's coincidence that he chose an investigative journalist right when his financial situation became desperate? The question landed like a punch. Because I'd wondered that myself, late at night when I couldn't sleep. Why had Brandon been so vague about his family? Why had he avoided bringing me home for 2 years? Why had he proposed so suddenly 3 months ago? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my editor David, need your notes on the Castellano real estate case by Monday. The pattern is getting clearer, Castellano real estate case. The shell companies. The money moving through Connecticut properties. I looked at Victoria, really looked at her. The expensive jewelry. The designer clothes, the confidence of someone who'd spent her whole life with money and power, the confession about Jennifer, I said slowly. That was just the hook. You needed something big enough to make me trust you immediately. Something that would make me see Brandon as the villain. He smiled. It wasn't warm. You're as smart as I'd hoped, and if I say no, then I'll tell Brandon you came here looking for money. That you tried to seduce his mother into helping you access the trust. Who do you think he'll believe? The fiancé he's known for 2 years, or the mother who raised him? I stood up, my legs unsteady. This is insane, this is family, dear. Victoria walked toward the door, then paused. You have until dinner to decide. We're eating at 7. I suggest you think carefully about which side you want to be on. She left me standing in the drawing room, my mind racing through everything she'd said. The confession. The bribe. The threat. Have you ever realized someone's tears were a performance? That every word out of their mouth was calculated to manipulate you? Comment below, because what happened next made me question everything I thought I knew about truth. I didn't have until dinner to decide. I had exactly 8 minutes before Brandon appeared in the doorway, his phone held up at eye level, the red recording light clearly visible, still trying to poison people against me. Mother? His voice was different. Not the warm, gentle tone I'd known for 2 years. This was cold. Sharp. The voice of someone who'd caught his prey exactly where he wanted them. Victoria, who'd been halfway across the foyer, froze. Her confident composure cracked for just a second before she recovered. Brandon. I didn't know you were home. Clearly. He stepped into the room, and I noticed he was in a suit. Not the casual clothes he'd been wearing when he texted me this morning. A full suit like he'd come from somewhere important. Or like he'd been preparing for this moment. How much did you offer her this time? 20 million? 30, this time. The words registered like a slap. Victoria's eyes flicked to me, then back to Brandon. I was simply having a conversation with your fiancé. You were recruiting her into your latest scheme. He lowered the phone but didn't stop recording. Did she tell you about Jennifer Morrison? The tragic accident she's been turning into a murder for 20 years? She said you pushed her, I heard myself say. Brandon laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course she did. Let me guess. She cried. She trembled. She made you feel like you were the only one who could save her from her terrible son. I didn't answer because he was right. He moved closer, and I realized I was seeing him clearly for the first time. The careful way he positioned himself between me and the door. The calculation in his eyes. The phone still recording everything. Destiny, he said, and my name sounded wrong in his mouth now. I need to tell you something I should have told you months ago. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. What? This invitation wasn't random. You weren't invited here to meet my family. He glanced at his mother, who'd gone very still. You were invited here because we needed to see which one of you would break first. The room tilted. Which one of us? You or my mother? Brandon pocketed his phone finally. See, Destiny, my mother has a pattern. Every time I get serious with someone, she does this. Tells them terrible stories about me. Offers them money. Tries to turn them against me so I'll end up alone and she'll maintain control. Victoria's face had gone pale. That's not, you did it to Jessica. You did it to Claire. You did it to Melissa. He counted them on his fingers. 3 women I cared about, all of them chased away by your manipulations. So this time, I decided to try something different. What did you do? I whispered, his smile was sharp. I told you exactly what you needed to hear to defend my mother the moment you walked in. I told you Nicole was cruel. I told you my mother was fragile. I set it up so you'd immediately take her side when you saw her crying on the floor. Nicole. Standing over Victoria in rage. Her cryptic warning, Brandon told you that? Of course he did. She'd been trying to warn me, Brandon continued. I needed to record her making the offer. Proof of her pattern of manipulation. Proof that she's been sabotaging my relationships for years. He pulled out his phone again, showing me the screen. Multiple recordings. Dates going back months. I've been documenting everything. The threats about the trust. The lies about Jennifer. All of it. Why me? My voice barely worked. Why did you choose me? His expression shifted, and for just a moment, I saw something that looked almost like regret. Because you're an investigative journalist. Because you'd believe a good story when you heard one. Because I needed someone smart enough to ask the right questions but trusting enough to ignore their instincts, trusting enough to ignore my instincts. Every red flag I'd dismissed. Every question I'd swallowed. Every time I'd told myself I was overthinking things. So this whole weekend, I said slowly, was just you using me to trap your mother? No. His voice softened slightly. This whole relationship was me using you to trap my mother. The weekend is just the finale. The words hit me like physical blows. 2 years. 730 days of my life. Every kiss, every dinner, every night spent dreaming about our future, all of it a lie. Why didn't you just record her yourself? I asked. Victoria, who'd been silent this whole time, laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. Because I'd never make an offer like that to him directly. I needed a third party. An outsider who seemed trustworthy. She looked at me with something that might have been pity. You were just the latest prop in our war. Brandon nodded. So thank you, Destiny. You played your part perfectly. I stood there, trapped between them, realizing that every single thing I'd believed about this weekend was a lie. The question was, which lies went deeper than I could possibly understand? Brendan took my elbow, his grip firm but not quite painful. We need to talk. Privately, Victoria didn't try to stop us. She just watched with an expression I couldn't read as Brandon led me down the hallway to a room I hadn't seen yet. His father's study, judging by the dark wood and leather furniture. The kind of room designed to remind everyone who entered it that serious money lived here. He closed the door behind us, finally pocketing his phone. I know you're angry. Angry didn't begin to cover it. I was a journalist. I'd built my career on asking the right questions, spotting inconsistencies, never taking anything at face value. And I'd let this man fool me for 2 years. How much of it was real? I asked. Any of it? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. The first few dates were genuine. I liked you. But when my mother started her usual investigation into my new girlfriend, when she started asking questions about your job, your background, I realized you could be useful. Useful. The word made my skin crawl. So you proposed. I proposed because she was escalating. Making threats. Spreading rumors to my colleagues about my mental state. He moved to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. She's done this before, Destiny. Not just with my relationships. With my father before he died. With Nicole's husband until they divorced. He handed me the folder. Inside were photos. A younger woman, maybe 25, standing with Brandon. Then another woman. Then a third, Jessica, Claire, Melissa, he said. All relationships that ended after my mother got to them. After she filled their heads with lies about me being violent, unstable, dangerous. I flipped through the photos. There were text messages, too. Screenshots of conversations where Victoria offered money, made threats, told wild stories. Jennifer Morrison really did die, Brandon continued. But it was a seizure. A tragic accident that my mother has been weaponizing for 20 years. The Morrisons are still in Connecticut. You can verify everything I'm telling you. My journalist training was screaming at me to check every detail, but there was something off about the way he was presenting this. Too neat. Too prepared. Why didn't you just tell me the truth from the beginning? I asked. Why lie to me for 2 years? Because I needed you to be genuinely surprised today. If you'd known the plan, my mother would have seen through it. He took the folder back. She's good at reading people, Destiny. The only way to catch her was to make sure you had authentic reactions. I thought about Victoria's offer. $20 million. The way she'd calculated every word. But I also thought about Brandon's cold smile when he'd said I'd played my part perfectly. You're both manipulating me, I said, yes. He didn't deny it. The difference is, I'm telling you the truth now. My mother would just keep spinning lies until you didn't know which way was up. The door opened suddenly. Nicole stood there, still in her designer clothes, but her expression was different now. Exhausted. Sad. Are you done with your performance, brother? She looked at me. Did he show you the folder? The one he's been updating for months? Brandon's jaw tightened. Nicole, stay out of this. I told you to leave, Nicole said to me, ignoring him completely. I told you they're both liars. Because they are. She stepped into the room. My brother isn't trying to protect his relationships from our mother. He's trying to get her declared mentally incompetent so he can access the trust early. That's not Brandon started, and our mother isn't trying to protect herself. She's trying to maintain control over money that was supposed to be distributed years ago. Nicole's eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. They've been playing this game for 5 years. Since Dad died. And they drag innocent people into it whenever they need fresh ammunition against each other. She looked at me with something like compassion. Whatever he told you about me, about our family, about any of this? Question all of it. Because the only truth in this house is that they'll both sacrifice anyone to win. Brandon moved toward his sister, but she was already backing out of the room. Get out while you can, Destiny, Nicole said. Before they destroy you completely. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with Brandon and the weight of knowing that nothing I'd been told could be trusted. I tried to leave at 6:30 p.m. The snowstorm started at 6:45 p.m. I stood at the front door, overnight bag in hand, watching fat white flakes fall so thick I couldn't see the driveway anymore. My Uber driver had cancelled 3 minutes earlier. Sorry, roads are getting too dangerous. All drivers being pulled off until morning. The weather service didn't predict this, I said to no one in particular. Brandon appeared behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence. Connecticut's storms can be unpredictable. Especially this time of year, unpredictable. Or perfectly timed. Oh, you should stay in the guest room, Victoria said from somewhere in the house. Her voice carried that false warmth again. We have plenty of space. Of course they did. They had 12 bedrooms according to the property records I'd pulled up on my phone while pretending to check the weather. The guest room was on the 3rd floor. East wing. Far from both Brandon's room and Victoria's suite. Isolated, but with a clear view of the circular driveway where my Uber would have picked me up if the storm hadn't started exactly when I tried to leave. I didn't unpack. Just sat on the bed, fully dressed, watching snow pile up against the windows while my mind went through everything I'd learned in the past 4 hours. Both of them were lying. That much was clear. But about what? And why? At 11:47 p.m., the house went quiet. No footsteps in the hallway. No voices carrying through the walls. Just silence and the muffled sound of wind against glass. At 1:53 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. I'd spent 6 years as an investigative journalist. I knew how to move quietly through unfamiliar spaces. How to search without leaving evidence. How to find the truth people worked hard to hide. The hallway was dark except for small emergency lights near the floor. I moved in my socks, phone flashlight covered with my hand to dim the glow. Every door I passed was closed. Every room silent. Victoria's study was on the 2nd floor, down a corridor lined with family photos. I recognized it from earlier when Brandon had walked me past it. Mother's private space, he'd said. Off limits to everyone. The door was locked, but it was an old lock. The kind that looked impressive but could be opened with a credit card if you knew the right angle. My driver's license worked just fine. Inside, the study was exactly what I expected. Expensive furniture. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A massive desk with a computer I didn't dare turn on. But filing cabinets. Those I could work with. The first drawer held household records. Utility bills. Property taxes. All addressed to Brandon Castellano, not Victoria. Not joint. Just Brandon. The second drawer was more interesting. Legal documents dated from 5 years ago. The trust dissolution after his father's death. But instead of the $40 million trust Victoria had mentioned, the amount listed was $12 million. And it had already been distributed. $6 million to Brandon. $6 million to Nicole. Nothing held in trust. Nothing requiring Victoria's mental competency hearing. Victoria didn't have $40 million to protect. She didn't have anything except what Brandon allowed her to have. I photographed every page with my phone, careful to keep the flash off. The third drawer held medical records. Victoria's psychiatric evaluations. 3 of them, all from the past 18 months. All saying the same thing: no signs of mental instability, mild anxiety, recommended continued therapy but no medications needed. If Brandon was trying to have her declared incompetent, he was failing. The doctors wouldn't support his claim, unless he wasn't actually trying. Unless that was another lie. The bottom drawer held a folder labeled Jennifer Morrison, 2004. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside were newspaper clippings. The local Greenwich paper. Teen dies in tragic accident at private party. The article was short. Jennifer Morrison, 16, had suffered a seizure while swimming at a private residence. Emergency services called but unable to revive her. Death ruled accidental. Family requests privacy during this difficult time. No mention of Brandon. No mention of the Castellanos at all. The party had been at a different estate entirely. The Harrington property, 3 miles away. Victoria had lied about everything. The location. The cover-up. The payment to the family. All of it fabricated, but why keep a file about it? Why hold on to these clippings if she was just going to lie about the details? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: get out of the study. Now I froze, looking around the darkroom. Then I saw it. A small camera in the corner, red light blinking. Someone was watching. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, relocked the door with my license, and walked calmly back to my room. My heart was hammering, but my face stayed neutral. Years of interviewing people who didn't want to talk had taught me how to hide my reactions. Back in the guest room, I locked the door and shoved a chair under the handle. Then I sat on the bed, reviewing the photos I'd taken. Victoria had no money. The trust was already distributed. The doctors said she was mentally sound. And Jennifer Morrison's death had nothing to do with the Castellanos except that Victoria kept newspaper clippings about it. None of this made sense. Unless the whole thing, all of it, was about something else entirely. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. The Wi-Fi password is Old Money 2019. You'll need it to research what you found. You're welcome. And Nicole. Warning me again. Helping me from wherever she was in this enormous house. When you're trapped somewhere and realize nothing is what it seems, you have 2 choices: panic or investigate. I chose investigation. Keep watching because what I found next changed everything. The Wi-Fi signal in the guest room was weak. 1.2 if I stood near the window. I spent the next 3 hours crouched on the floor by the radiator, where the signal was strongest, searching for truth in the gaps of what I'd been told. Jennifer Morrison, Greenwich, Connecticut, 2004. The search results loaded slowly. The spinning wheel on my phone screen felt like it took years. But eventually, the articles appeared. Local news archives. The Greenwich Time. The Stamford Advocate, teen dies in tragic pool accident. Jennifer Morrison, 16, had been attending a graduation party at the Harrington estate when she suffered a seizure in the pool. Several witnesses reported seeing her swimming normally before she suddenly went under. 2 adults pulled her out and performed CPR until paramedics arrived. She was pronounced dead at Greenwich Hospital at 9:47 p.m. The article included quotes from her family. Her mother, Jennifer, had epilepsy, but it was well controlled. This was a tragic accident. We don't blame anyone. Her father, the Harringtons, and their friends did everything they could. They called 911 immediately. They tried to save her. We're grateful they were there. Her younger sister Danielle, age 15, my sister loved swimming. She would have wanted everyone to know this wasn't anyone's fault. No mention of Brandon Castellano. No mention of the Castellano family at all, but Victoria had kept clippings about it for 20 years. had built an entire false narrative around a death that had nothing to do with them. I searched deeper, fighting against the weak Wi-Fi that kept dropping my connection. Court records. No lawsuits filed by the Morrison family. No settlements. No sealed records that would indicate a cover-up. Then I searched for the Morrison family relocation to Portland that Victoria had mentioned. Nothing. No address changes. No employment record showing a move. In fact, according to public records, the Morrisons still lived in Greenwich. Same house they'd been in since 1998. I pulled up social media. Patricia Morrison still posted photos from the same colonial house I could see in Google Street View. Her husband Robert was listed as working at the same insurance company he'd been with for 30 years, and Danielle Morrison, age 35 now. Married. 2 kids. Working as a guidance counselor at Greenwich High School. The same school where her sister had been a student 20 years ago. They'd never left. Victoria had lied about that too. My phone battery was at 23%. I'd been searching for almost 3 hours, and dawn was starting to gray the windows. I needed to move fast. I found Danielle Morrison's work email on the school website. Then her personal Facebook page. Then, through careful scrolling, a post from 3 months ago about her private counseling practice. Now accepting new clients for family trauma recovery, she included her office address. A small building on Greenwich Avenue, right in town. 15 minutes from the estate. I took screenshots of everything. The articles. The family information. Danielle's contact details. Then I cleared my search history and powered off my phone to save the battery. Outside, the snow had stopped. The driveway was buried under 8 inches of white, but the roads would be cleared soon. Connecticut was efficient about these things. I had maybe 2 hours before Brandon or Victoria would expect me to be awake. 2 hours to figure out my next move. The smart thing would be to call the police. Tell them I'd been manipulated into coming here. Show them the recording Brandon had made. The folder Victoria had kept. Let professionals sort through the lies, but I was a journalist. And every instinct I had was screaming that there was a bigger story here. Something that explained why both Brandon and Victoria were so desperate to control a narrative about a death that had nothing to do with them. Why keep newspaper clippings about Jennifer Morrison? Why build elaborate lies about her death? Why use her memory as a weapon in whatever war they were fighting? My phone buzzed. Nicole again. They'll both be watching you at breakfast. Act normal. Don't let them know what you found. I texted back, why are you helping me? The response came 3 minutes later, because they'll destroy you the way they destroyed everyone else. Someone needs to stop them. I tried. I failed. Maybe you won't. What did they do to you? Ask me when you get out. If you get out. The sun was rising now. I could hear movement in the house. Footsteps on the floor below. Voices too muted to make out words. Took a shower, changed into clean clothes from my bag, and practiced my expression in the mirror. Confused. Uncertain. A woman who'd been caught in the middle of a family dispute and didn't know who to trust, not a woman who'd spent the night breaking into private studies and researching 20-year-old deaths. Not a woman who knew both of them were lying about almost everything. At breakfast, I would smile. I would act uncomfortable. I would ask polite questions and give vague answers. I would let them think they'd successfully confused me, and then I would find a way to Danielle Morrison's office and get the truth. The real truth. The one that explained why 2 wealthy people were so obsessed with a tragedy that had never involved them. My phone was at 18% battery when I finally heard the knock on my door. Destiny? Brandon's voice. Gentle. Concerned. Are you awake? I wanted to check on you after everything yesterday. I opened the door with a practiced smile. I'm fine. Just a long night. He looked at me carefully, searching for something in my expression. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it. Good. Come down for breakfast when you're ready. We need to talk about what happens next. What happens next, I thought. You mean what you've planned to happen next? But I just nodded. I'll be down in 10 minutes. Morning came, and I pretended ignorance while my mind raced through exactly how I was going to escape this house and find Danielle Morrison. I made my escape at 10:30 a.m., claiming I needed to pick up my prescription from a pharmacy in town. Brandon had offered to drive me. I insisted on calling my own Uber, saying I needed some time alone to process everything. He'd let me go. Maybe because the roads were clear now. Maybe because he thought he'd already won. Maybe because whatever they were planning, my leaving the house for an hour didn't interfere with it. The Uber dropped me at CVS on Greenwich Avenue. I went inside, bought nothing, and walked 3 blocks to the address I'd found for Danielle Morrison's counseling practice. The building was small. Brick. A brass plaque by the door listed 3 therapists. Danielle Morrison, LCSW, was on the 2nd floor. I climbed the stairs, my heart hammering. This woman didn't know me. Had no reason to trust me. For all she knew, I was another person sent by the Castellanos to drag her dead sister's memory into whatever game they were playing. The waiting room was empty. A receptionist looked up from her desk. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I need to speak with Ms. Morrison." "It's about her sister Jennifer." The receptionist's expression changed immediately. Wary. Protective. "I'll see if she's available." She disappeared through an inner door. I heard muffled voices. Then silence. 2 minutes later, a woman emerged. Dark hair pulled back. Professional clothes. Tired eyes that had seen too much grief. "On Danielle Morrison," she said. Her voice was careful. "Who are you, and why are you asking about my sister?" "My name is Destiny Clarke. I'm a journalist, but I'm not here for a story. I'm here because the Castellano family has been using your sister's death to manipulate me, and I need to know why." Her face went pale. "Come with me." Her office was small but comfortable. Photos of her family on the desk. 2 kids, elementary school age. A husband with a kind smile. A life rebuilt after tragedy. She closed the door and turned to face me. "What did they tell you about Jennifer?" "Victoria Castellano said Brandon pushed her into a pool 20 years ago. That they covered it up. Paid your family to relocate to Portland. That she's been keeping the secret but will expose him if necessary." Danielle's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Of course she did. Of course that's the story. It's not true. None of it's true." She sat down heavily in her chair. "My sister died at the Harrington estate. Brandon Castellano wasn't even there. We never received any payment. We never moved. The death was ruled accidental because it was accidental. Jennifer had epilepsy. She had a seizure in the pool. It's the nightmare scenario our parents had feared for years, but it wasn't murder, and it wasn't anyone's fault." "Then why do the Castellanos keep bringing it up?" Danielle was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady but strained. "Because they need a tragedy they can weaponize." Brandon's father, Richard Castellano, was one of the responders who tried to save Jennifer that night. He was at the party. He pulled her out of the pool. He performed CPR until the paramedics arrived. He did everything right. She pulled out her own file. Photos. News clippings. Richard became obsessed with Jennifer's death. Guilty, maybe, that he couldn't save her. He started a foundation in her name. Donated money to epilepsy research. My parents thought it was kind. They had no idea it was the beginning of something much worse. "What do you mean?" Richard started using Jennifer's story in his business dealings. Sob story about the teen he couldn't save. It made him seem human. Caring. He'd tell people about it at fundraisers, at business meetings. My sister's death became his calling card. Her voice broke slightly. And when Richard died 5 years ago, Victoria and Brandon both tried to claim ownership of that narrative. The pieces were starting to fit together. They've been fighting over who gets to use your sister's memory. Victoria wants to paint Brandon as unstable. A murderer who got away with it because of family money. Brandon wants to paint Victoria as delusional. Making up stories about tragedies she witnessed. Danielle looked at me directly. Neither of them cares about Jennifer. They just care about winning whatever war they're fighting, and they use other people to do it. 3 girlfriends before you that I know of. Each one told some version of the story about Jennifer. Each one eventually figured out they were being manipulated and left. But the Castellanos learned from each attempt. Got better at it. More convincing. She paused. Why you, specifically? What made them choose you? That was the question I couldn't answer. I don't know. You're a journalist. It wasn't a question, yes. Investigative reporter for the Boston Herald, Danielle nodded slowly. Then you're not just a prop in their family drama. You're something else. A tool they're planning to use for something bigger. My phone buzzed. A text from Brendan, where are you? We need to talk. It's important. Another text, this one from Victoria, Destiny, please come back to the house. Brendan is planning something. You're not safe. I showed both messages to Danielle. She read them and shook her head. They know you left. They're panicking because you're off script. What should I do? Get as far away from that family as possible. She pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. But if you can't, if you need proof of what I've told you, here's my parents' number. They'll verify everything. And here. She handed me a thumb drive. Copies of every interaction we've had with the Castellanos over the years. The cease and desist letters we sent them. The recordings of Richard using Jennifer's story without permission. All of it. I took the drive, feeling its weight. Why are you giving this to me? Because they use people, Destiny. They used my sister's death. They used your relationship. They'll keep doing it until someone stops them. Her eyes were fierce now. Maybe you're the one who can. I left Danielle Morrison's office with more questions than answers. But at least now I knew the central truth. Whatever the Castellanos were planning, I wasn't just caught in the middle of their war. I was a weapon they'd specifically chosen for a purpose I still didn't understand. The question was, what were they planning to do with me? The Uber dropped me back at the estate at 11:43 a.m. I'd been gone exactly 73 minutes. Both of them were waiting in the foyer, not pretending to do other things. Not caught mid-conversation. Just standing there, positioned like actors who'd been given their marks and were waiting for my entrance. Brandon by the stairs. Victoria near the drawing room door. Both of them watching me with expressions I couldn't quite read. We need to talk, Brendan said. All three of us, Victoria added. I set down my bag slowly, buying myself time to think. The thumb drive from Danielle Morrison was in my jacket pocket. My phone, still at 12% battery, was recording in my other pocket. I'd started the recording the moment I got in the Uber. I met with Danielle Morrison, I said. No point in hiding it. They clearly already knew. Victoria's expression didn't change. Of course you did. She told me the truth about Jennifer's death. The real truth. That your husband was there. That he couldn't save her. That he turned her death into a business tool. I looked between them. That both of you have been fighting over who gets to control that narrative. Brendan smiled. It was the smile I'd seen yesterday when he'd caught Victoria making her offer. Sharp. Victorious. Very good, Destiny. You're as thorough as your reputation suggested. What reputation? Your work at the Boston Herald, Victoria said, moving closer. The corruption investigation that won you that regional journalism award last year. The housing fraud case you exposed in 2022. You're known for being persistent. For not giving up even when people try to block your access to information. My chest tightened. How do you know about that? Because we've been researching you for 8 months, Brendan said. Since before we even met. Every article you've written. Every source you've cultivated. Every investigation you've started but haven't finished yet. The coffee shop. Our first meeting. I'd been working on a story about commercial real estate fraud. I'd been sitting alone, frustrated because a source had cancelled on me. Brendan had been at the next table, charming and sympathetic when I'd accidentally knocked over my coffee in frustration. That wasn't an accident, I whispered. No. He pulled out his phone, showing me a text thread. Dates going back 9 months. Victoria hired a private investigator to track your movements. We knew where you'd be that Tuesday. We knew you'd be upset about the cancelled interview. We knew you'd be vulnerable to someone offering kindness. Victoria's voice was steady. Professional. Did you really think it was coincidence he met you? A wealthy man with no apparent job just happening to be in that specific coffee shop at that exact time. The room tilted. Every date. Every romantic dinner. Every late-night conversation where I'd opened up about my work, my frustrations, my dreams. The proposal, I said. 3 months ago. Right after I started investigating the Castellano real estate holdings, Brendan nodded. You were getting too close. Your notes were connecting shell companies we'd spent years keeping separate. You'd found the bank transfers. The falsified property assessments. All of it. I thought about the file on my computer, the one I'd been building for months. The one that showed a pattern of illegal real estate schemes running through Connecticut and Massachusetts. The one that kept circling back to the Castellano name. So you made me fall in love with you. My voice sounded distant. Hollow. To stop the investigation. To control it, Victoria corrected. To know exactly what you knew. What you suspected. Where you were looking next, and when the investigation continued anyway? I asked. Brendan's expression hardened. Then we needed a different approach. We needed to discredit you before you could publish. Make you look like an unstable woman creating conspiracy theories about her ex-fiancé's family. A scorned lover making false accusations. The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. The invitation this weekend. The manufactured family drama. Victoria's confession about Jennifer. Brendan's recording of his mother's offer. All of it designed to make me look paranoid. Delusional. Like someone who couldn't separate professional investigation from personal vendetta. This whole weekend was a setup, I said. From the moment you arrived, Victoria confirmed. The fight between Nicole and me. My tearful confession. Brendan's timely entrance with his phone recording. All of it carefully planned. Nicole tried to warn me. Nicole was supposed to warn you, Brendan said. It made the whole thing more believable. The daughter caught in the middle, trying to help the innocent outsider. We needed you to trust someone, and it couldn't be either of us. I looked at Victoria. The money you offered me. The scheme to prove Brendan unstable, all part of the script. We needed you to see me as desperate. Manipulative. Someone whose word couldn't be trusted. When you eventually figured out we were targeting you, and I played right into it. The words tasted like ash. I defended you. I took your side. I made myself look exactly like the unstable, easily manipulated woman you needed me to be. Brendan moved closer. You're a good journalist, Destiny. But you wanted to believe in love. That made you vulnerable. That made you useful. If you ever discovered your entire relationship was a lie, that every kiss and every promise was calculated manipulation, type manipulation below. Because what they revealed next made me understand exactly how deep their planning went. Victoria pulled out her own phone, opening a folder of documents. Your editor, David Webb. He's been building a case against our business operations for 6 months. Using your research without telling you the full scope of what he suspects. She turned the screen toward me. Emails between David and the FBI. Financial Crimes Division. Wire fraud. Money laundering. Racketeering charges that could send both Brendan and Victoria to federal prison for 20 years. David has been using you, Brendan said. Letting you do the groundwork while he coordinates with federal prosecutors. You thought you were investigating simple real estate fraud. You had no idea he was building a RICO case. My mind raced back through every conversation with David. Every assignment he'd given me. Every time he'd push me to dig deeper into the Castellano holdings. He never told you about the FBI involvement because he needed your research to be clean, Victoria continued. Untainted by knowledge of the federal investigation. Your notes, your findings, they're admissible in court because you had no idea you were working on a criminal case, but once we're charged, Brendan said, your credibility becomes crucial. If we can prove you're biased, emotionally compromised, conducting a vendetta against your ex-fiancé's family, then everything you've found gets thrown out. Fruit of the poison tree, the legal term hung in the air. They'd planned this like lawyers because they'd probably consulted lawyers. Probably had a whole team helping them build this defense. So you seduced me. Made me fall in love with you. Proposed marriage. I forced my voice to stay level. All to create grounds for dismissing my investigation. We created a paper trail, Victoria said. Text messages where you seemed obsessed with Brendan's family wealth. Emails where you asked leading questions about his business. Witnesses who'll testify that you were more interested in his connections than his personality. None of that's true. Doesn't matter what's true, Brendan said. Matters what we can make a jury believe. And we've spent 2 years building a narrative. The struggling journalist who targeted a wealthy man. Who wormed her way into his life to get access to information for her career. I thought about every dinner with Brendan's colleagues. Every cocktail party where I'd been introduced to his business associates. Every casual conversation where I'd asked innocent questions about real estate markets and investment strategies. They'd been documenting all of it. Twisting it. Building a case that I was the predator, not the victim. Nicole, I said. Where does she fit? Nicole took a settlement 5 years ago, Victoria said. $6 million to keep quiet about certain business practices. She signed an NDA. She can't testify against us without losing everything, but she tried to warn me. Brendan's laugh was cold. Nicole's been trying to find someone willing to go public for years. Someone not bound by her NDA. She thought you might be that person. We knew she'd reach out, so we built that into the plan. Made her warnings look like family drama instead of genuine attempts to expose us. The texts from Nicole. The cryptic messages. Get out while you can. All of it documented. All of it ready to be presented as evidence of family dysfunction rather than criminal conspiracy. Your investigation notes, Victoria said. The ones on your computer at home. We have copies. Brendan had access to your apartment for 2 years, the spare key I'd given him. The nights he'd stayed over while I worked late at the office. He'd been photographing my research. Copying my files. Knowing exactly what I knew and where I was looking next. The Boston Herald will publish your story, Brendan said. And we'll sue for defamation. We'll present evidence of your bias. Your emotional involvement. Your vendetta against the family that rejected you. Will destroy your career, Victoria added. Your credibility. Everything you've built as a journalist. And the FBI case will fall apart because their star witness is a scorned lover with an axe to grind. I stood there, looking at both of them, understanding finally crystallizing into horrible clarity. They weren't just protecting their business. They were destroying anyone who threatened it. And they'd spent 2 years of my life making sure I'd be the perfect victim. Brendan pulled an envelope from his jacket. There's an easier way through this. He opened it, showing me a check. $100,000. My name already filled in on the payee line. Walk away, he said simply. Take the money, forget everything you found. Forget this weekend. We'll say the relationship didn't work out. No hard feelings. No story. No investigation. Victoria moved to stand beside her son. United front. Or we go to war. We release the documentation of your bias. We show the court how you targeted Brendan for professional gain. We destroy your reputation so thoroughly that no one will ever hire you again. Your choice, Brendan said. Money and silence. Or professional destruction. I looked at that check. $100,000. Enough to pay off my student loans. Enough to start over somewhere new. Enough to walk away from this nightmare and never look back, the safe choice. The smart choice, but I'd spent 6 years building my career on truth. On holding powerful people accountable. On refusing to look away when I found evidence of wrongdoing. If I took this money, I wasn't just betraying my investigation. I was betraying every source who'd trusted me. Every reader who'd believed my work. Every journalist who'd taught me that truth mattered more than safety. You know what's funny? I said, my voice steadier than I expected. You spent 2 years studying me. Learning my patterns. My weaknesses. My vulnerabilities, and it worked, Victoria said. Did it? I pulled my phone from my pocket. The recording app was still running. Timestamp showing 1 hour and 17 minutes. Because a good investigative journalist has a habit. We record everything. Every interview. Every confrontation. Every conversation where someone might later claim they didn't say what they said. Brendan's face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? I held up the phone so they could see the screen. Their voices played back. We created a paper trail. Text messages where you seemed obsessed with Brandon's family wealth. Victoria lunged for the phone. I stepped back, holding it out of reach. I also recorded your confession about Jennifer Morrison yesterday, I said. Victoria claiming Brandon murdered her. Brandon's admission that he knew I was a journalist from day one. All of it. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every piece of your conspiracy. That's illegal, Brandon said. Connecticut is a 2-party consent state. You can't use those recordings. True, I agreed. But I can give them to the FBI. And they can use them to get a warrant. To flip your business partners. To offer immunity to whoever talks first about your real estate schemes. I looked at both of them. So here's my choice. I'm keeping the recording. I'm finishing my investigation. And I'm making sure everyone knows exactly what you are. Victoria's voice was ice. We'll destroy you. Try, I said. I'm a journalist. I've been destroyed before. The question is, can you survive the truth? You think one recording is enough? Brandon's voice was low, dangerous. We have lawyers. We have money. We'll tie you up in court for years, maybe, I said, backing toward the door. But I already sent everything to my editor. The recordings. The documents from Danielle Morrison. All of it was a lie. The Wi-Fi signal had been too weak to upload anything. But they didn't know that. Victoria's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled up my email on the phone screen, showing them a draft message to David. Sent at 10:47 a.m. Right before I came back here. Another lie. The draft was unsent, sitting in my outbox waiting for a strong enough signal. But the preview looked convincing. Brandon lunged forward, grabbing for my phone. I jerked back, but he was faster. His hand closed around my wrist, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Give me the phone, Destiny, let her go. Nicole's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stood in the doorway, holding a laptop and a thick accordion file. Behind her, 2 uniformed police officers filled the entryway. Brandon released my wrist immediately, stepping back. Nicole, what did you do? What I should have done 5 years ago. She handed the laptop to one of the officers. Everything's on here. Financial records. Communication between Brandon and Victoria about their real estate schemes. Recordings of them planning how to discredit Destiny's investigation. Documentation of 12 different shell companies they've been using to launder money. The second officer was already pulling out handcuffs. Brandon Castellano, Victoria Castellano, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. This is insane, Victoria said, but her voice shook. You can't possibly. We have a warrant, the first officer said, showing her the document. Based on evidence provided by Nicole Castellano and corroborated by an ongoing FBI investigation, Brandon looked at his sister with pure hatred. You broke your NDA. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything, Nicole said quietly. My marriage. My relationship with Dad before he died. 5 years of watching you two destroy people and being too afraid to stop you. She looked at me. But I'm not afraid anymore. The officers were reading them their rights. Victoria silent and pale. Brendan still trying to argue, claiming this was all a mistake, that his sister was mentally unstable, that I was a scorned lover seeking revenge, but the officers weren't listening. They'd heard it all before. Rich people always had explanations. Nicole walked over to me as they led Brendan and Victoria toward the door in handcuffs. Are you okay? I was shaking. The adrenaline finally hitting me. You called the police. I've been working with the FBI for 3 months, she said. Since I figured out Brendan was targeting you. I couldn't warn you directly without tipping them off, so I left breadcrumbs. The texts. The warnings. Hoping you'd investigate on your own and find the truth, the camera in Victoria's study, mine. I've been documenting everything they do. Every conversation. Every plan. I just needed proof they were actively trying to destroy someone. That's when the FBI said they could move. She glanced at the officers loading her mother and brother into separate police cars. I'm sorry you got caught in this, I got myself caught in this, I said. I ignored every red flag. I wanted to believe in the relationship. That's not a weakness, Destiny. That's being human. Nicole touched my arm gently. They're professionals at manipulation. You're not the first person they've fooled. You're just the first one who fought back. Through the window, I watched the police cars pull away. Blue lights flashing against the snow still piled on the sides of the driveway. My phone buzzed. Finally, a strong signal. All my unsent messages and drafts started uploading automatically. David's response came through seconds later. Got your files. FBI confirmed arrests. Story approved for publication. This is massive, Destiny. Are you safe? I texted back, I'm safe. And I have everything we need. Nicole was watching me. What happens now? No, I said, I write the truth. All of it. The mansion felt different now. Emptier. The wealth and luxury just props in a game that had finally ended. I looked at Nicole. Thank you. For the warnings. For the evidence. For stopping them. Thank you for being brave enough to look, she said. Most people would have taken the money and run. I'm not most people, she smiled. It was sad but genuine. No. You're definitely not. 3 months later, my exposé ran on the front page of the Boston Herald, House of Cards, how the Castellano family built an empire on fraud and manipulation. 12,000 words. Photos. Documents. Everything I'd found plus everything Nicole had given the FBI. The real estate schemes. The money laundering. The pattern of targeting people who got too close to their operation. Brendan and Victoria were convicted on 14 counts. Federal prison, 20 years each. Their assets seized, their properties sold off to pay restitution to victims who'd lost money in their schemes. The journalism community called it the investigation of the year. I was nominated for a Pulitzer. Job offers came from national papers, television networks, documentary producers, but the success felt hollow. I sat in Dr. Patricia Chen's office every Tuesday at 4 p.m., working through the trauma of having my entire relationship revealed as calculated manipulation. Working through the trust issues. The hypervigilance. The way I now questioned every interaction, looking for hidden motives. Healing isn't linear, Dr. Chen reminded me during a particularly difficult session. Some days will feel like progress. Some days will feel like you're back at the beginning. Both are normal. Nicole and I had coffee every Thursday. Not quite friends, not quite just sources. Mutual survivors of the same family's destruction, trying to build something honest from the wreckage. I sold the estate, she told me one afternoon. Donated the money to organizations that help victims of financial fraud. How does it feel? Lighter, she said. For the first time in 5 years, I'm not carrying their secrets. I understood that feeling. Publishing the story had lifted a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The fear that they'd get away with it. The guilt that I'd been too trusting. The shame that I'd let them manipulate me. My phone buzzed with a message from David, new assignment if you want it. Corporate embezzlement case. No romantic entanglements required, I smiled. Work had been my anchor through all of this. The thing I was good at. The thing that couldn't be faked or manipulated. I'm thinking about dating again, I told Dr. Chen during our next session. How does that feel? Terrifying. I laughed. But also necessary. I can't let what they did make me stop trusting everyone, she nodded. Trust is a muscle. It atrophies when you don't use it. But it also grows stronger with practice. I was learning that. Slowly. Learning to trust my instincts again. Learning to see red flags without seeing conspiracies in every shadow. Learning that most people were exactly who they appeared to be. The Castellanos had taken 2 years of my life. But they hadn't taken my future. Healing isn't linear. If you've had to rebuild after betrayal, after discovering someone you loved was using you, share your strength below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. The final piece of evidence came 6 months after the trial. I was reviewing documents for a follow-up article when I found it. A photograph in the evidence box marked Castellano Financial Records 1998-2004. Richard Castellano at a business dinner. Manhattan. 2003. And in the background, barely visible, a woman laughing at something someone off camera had said. My mother, I'd only seen a few photos of her. She'd died when I was 3. Cancer. Quick and merciless. I'd been raised by my grandmother, who'd passed when I was 19. But there she was. Claire Bennett, my mother, at the same event as Richard Castellano. 22 years ago, I pulled my mother's old address book from my apartment safe. Flipped through the contacts. There it was, in her handwriting, Richard C. Investment opportunity. They'd known each other. My mother and Brandon's father. Some business connection I'd never known about. Had that been why Brandon targeted me specifically? Some grudge from decades ago? Some unfinished business between our parents? I'd never know for sure. Richard was dead. My mother was dead. And Brandon and Victoria weren't talking. Some truths unravel everything. The question isn't what you'll find. It's whether you're ready for it. Subscribe for more stories about uncovering truth. Your gut instinct matters. Trust it.